Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Today we're talking about finding square roots, but we're going to focus on the idea of when do you just worry about having or using the positive answer? When do you worry about using the negative answer? And when is it that we would be wanting to use or write both as the answer? Now, I apologize, the camera's doing its weird thing, so as per usual, we're just going to move on. So, something we want to notice here is what's on the outside of the radical symbol. Now, when I say radical symbol, the radical symbol, hopefully you saw this during your note taking, the radical symbol is the square root symbol. It's a fancy word, just like we have fancy words for, the multiplication sign, depending on what we want to use. We call it parentheses, we can call it a dot. There's actually a different name for that. Challenge you to look that up and get back to me. But this is called a radical symbol. So sometimes this is referred to as radical 25. Most of the time we just call it, square root of 25. But if you want to sound fancy, you can say radical 25 or radical 9/16 or radical 2.25. So under the radical sign, we're just looking for what number times itself equals 2.5. Now, here I know that it's going to be 5. What I don't know yet, and what we're focusing on today, is whether this should be positive, negative, or both. And what we want to do is we want to use the sign that's on the outside. Now, if we go back and we think about it, we have learned before that if there is no sign, then it's positive. So the answer I want to use for A is just 5. And again, I did that because 5 times 5 is 25, and since I have two of them, I group them together as one, and that's 5, because 5 times 5 is 25. Now over here on B, if I use the same idea, I should be able to recognize from the very beginning, my answer's got to be negative. Now the fun part about doing a fraction is what it's asking is actually two different problems, and I got to solve those. So what times itself equals 9? Well, that's 3. And what times itself equals 16? That's 4. So what I can do is this is the same thing as saying negative radical. Oop, I did the whole thing radical again. I wanted not, so I'm going to redo it. Radical 9 over radical 16. These two problems are exactly the same thing. When I solve each one individually, I get negative 3 over 4, and this would be my answer. Because remember, again, I'm not worried about the positive 3 or the positive 4 because the sign beside the radical, the original sign. Now over here, I can recognize that I actually have both positive and negative. So I'm just going to keep that in my answer. Now this one's going to get a little bit trickier. But what's nice is even on these blue calculators, I have a radical sign. It's right here next to my positive negative sign that I can't use. But I can do 2.25 radical. There's my answer. I don't hit equal, I don't do anything, I just hit that radical sign, and I get 1.5. And there's my answer. Again, it's telling me I'm worrying about the positive and negative because it was part of the original problem. If nothing is there, it's positive, and if it is there, it's as a minus sign or a negative sign, then it is negative. Now remember, that includes the idea of terms. So when we break down an equation into terms, if the term is negative and it's got a square root, we're looking for the negative square root answer. So if you have any questions, make sure you're emailing those to me. Stay safe out there, guys, and we'll see you next class.